Hi, Troy Golden here, going to talk about some tips for office tenants in a lease renewal negotiation. Office tenants face an inherent disadvantage when renewing a lease, and oftentimes they leave money on the table unless they retain a tenant representation broker who's qualified and experienced. The asymmetry in a renewal negotiation arises from the fact that most of the time tenants tend to renew, and landlords know this. So a tenant really has to play the game perfectly in order to get the best deal. But tenants can shift the odds back in their favor by following some simple guidelines, which I'll go over now. Number one, hire a tenant representation broker. Professional landlords and leasing brokers conduct negotiations on a daily basis, while tenants are only in the market at best every 3 to 10 years. So an office tenant should retain a qualified tenant representation broker who knows the market well and can speak intelligently to the market and the terms offered by the landlord and the terms that the tenant could get from the landlord's competitors. Plus, the simple presence of having a broker representing the tenant in a renewal that will act as a signal to the landlord that the tenant is seriously considering a relocation and will prompt the landlord to offer more aggressive terms. Number two, the tenant should introduce competition for his tenancy, regardless of whether or not the tenant really wants to relocate, or market conditions, or the ability or intention to relocate. If the current landlord doesn't believe that the tenant is considering a relocation, then the tenant really doesn't have any leverage in the renewal negotiation, and the tenant's just not going to get a good deal. So a tenant should always at least go through the motions of touring alternative locations, getting alternative proposals, and asking the landlord to match terms in these alternative locations. Because you are going to get a better deal. This can take a longer time, but it's definitely worth it. Plus, you never know, you may have to relocate because of some unforeseen problem, and this way you always have a backup choice. Another thing that you need to do is to start early. Starting early allows you, the tenant, to evaluate properly the market. It allows you to negotiate the transaction and to deliver a legitimate threat to relocate in the negotiation. You really need enough time in a negotiation to be able to relocate in order to make the landlord feel threatened, so that he has to offer aggressive terms. If you start late, so late that there's not a realistic chance that you're going to move without paying a holdover penalty, then you've lost all your leverage in the negotiation and you're not going to get a good deal. And plus, starting early just makes everything less stressful. It makes everything easier. Next tip, don't make the first proposal. Ask for the landlord to send the proposal for you. Just a common negotiation tactic. That is, unless doing so prevents you from starting early. Next tip, don't accept the first proposal. Ask for more than you can get, and make your first counter at least an equal distance on the other side of the goal as the landlord's first proposal. For example, if the tenant's desired rent is $20 square foot gross, and the landlord starts with an initial proposal of $21 square foot gross, then the tenant's counter should be less than $19 square foot gross, but not so low as to end the negotiation. Next tip, keep your emotions in check. Try not to allow emotions to drive the negotiation for good or for ill. Be nice and pleasant, polite, but assertive. Similarly, don't overvalue, in economic terms, your previous tenure in the building. Oftentimes, tenants will say, "Oh, my landlord loves me. We have a great relationship, so I'm going to get an above market or below market deal." But this really isn't the case. The property is an investment for the landlord. He needs to get a high return on that investment, just like as a business owner, you need to get a high return on your business in order to provide for your family. The landlord also needs to provide for his. Tenants, you're not really going to get that much of a better deal just because you've been paying rent for 15 years. Actually, it's just the opposite. As a renewal, the tenant, you're going to get a less competitive offer because the landlord believes that you're probably not going to relocate, and he can take advantage of that. Next tip, only involve a few key decision-making personnel in negotiation. The successful negotiation depends on carefully controlling information, and to get the best deal, your tenant representation broker needs to be able to sometimes conceal some information or even lie on your behalf, and these efforts could accidentally be undermined if other parties are discussing the renewal or relocation with people related to the landlord side. Next tip, coordinate, this is related, coordinate all communication through your tenant representation broker. So don't speak directly to the leasing agent or landlord without your tenant representation broker present or knowing what's going to be said. Just consult with your broker beforehand and work out a strategy. Otherwise, you might risk undermining the coherent negotiation strategy. And finally, just make sure you retain an attorney once you get the lease contract to retain a real estate specialist attorney to review the lease contract and its amendments. Don't rely on an attorney to negotiate the economic terms. That's for the broker to do, but don't rely on the broker to negotiate legal clauses or interpret legal documents. That's for your attorney to do. And make sure your broker and attorney work in tandem. Final thought, if you know you want to stay in your current location for the foreseeable future, or take advantage of a tenant's market, but your lease isn't expiring in the immediate future, you could always take advantage of a blend and extend, initiating a extension a little bit early with the help of a tenant representation broker, initiating that discussion and negotiation. For more information Oh, and final thought, just again, retain a tenant representation broker early on in the process to review all the items I've discussed here in this video. For more information, contact Golden Group Real Estate at this email address or phone number, and additional reading is available at my blog. Thanks a lot. Bye.